I'm Ashton Addison from EventChain for InvestmentPitch Media and the Crypto Coin Show. And today on Blockchain Interviews, we have Greg Osuri, the founder and CEO of Akash Network. Greg, welcome to the show, and thanks for taking the time to be here.
Thank you, Ashton. Super excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to dive into Akash Network. I know you have a lot of things going on in the industry right now. So if we could just kick it off by starting with like a high-level overview of what is Akash Network, that would be great.
So Akash is essentially the world's first open source cloud that's self-sovereign, non-custodian, permissionless, right? And it works by connecting a layer of interconnected data centers, compute providers. Usually, if you think about the landscape, 85% or so of computing capacity in data centers remains unused. So Akash tries to aggregate this computing power and provides an open source platform to its users where the developers get to enjoy the cost savings anywhere from 2 to 3x of what they would otherwise pay on the cloud today, along with an incredibly modern developer experience, an experience that's really designed for needs of a developer in 2021.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. That's great. And are there a lot of problems that need to be solved right now in just the centralized cloud computing industry?
Yeah, so really, if you think about the big fours, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Alibaba, they're created for the previous generation of software. And these things have been around for 15 years. And as they got bigger and bigger, they forgot what the real focus should be as the developer, right? Mm-hmm. And also, they've gotten so big, and they built competitive moats around them. It's extremely hard for new players to come and actually provide services. In a way, they created an oligopoly, and we all know what an oligopoly looks like. If you look at the airline industry, or if you look at the telecom industry, it's not like people don't fly or people don't talk on the phone. Mm-hmm. These industries just stopped innovating, right? Mm-hmm. Because of oligopolization. So oligopolies tend to create products that are misaligned sometimes to the customer base, and they tend to create competitive modes that makes it prohibitive for new players to come and partake in what should be a competitive marketplace, right? So that's essentially what we're looking at for the cloud. And cloud, if you think about it, it is the fabric that runs a society. I mean, cloud is where all of our data, if you like it or not, is stored and processed. And it's increasingly becoming larger and larger, considering the amount of data that we process is doubling every year. And there seem to be no other really a solution to this problem. So that core, problem of the cloud getting disconnected and misaligned with the people and the interests of the people it serves is what we're trying to fix with Akash by creating an open source cloud, because open source, as we know, is a key for the innovation that we have in software, and we're trying to extend that innovation so that we can have a more liberal and a more aligned compute platform.
Definitely. And in terms of the targets that you're focusing on, I know there's a lot of blockchain and DeFi-based applications that are being hosted, on centralized cloud computing services, and they're looking for decentralized solutions. Are you focusing on those industries specifically right now, or are you really just able to host, all kinds of applications around the whole world?
Yeah, so it's a generic platform. You can essentially run anything that you run on Amazon or Google on Akash, and but since the applications are broad, we like to stay more focused so that our teams can focus on the efforts and be more connected to the users we serve, right? So, and the reason we chose to go with the DeFi focus and a more blockchain focus is because this is a crowd that has ideological alignment with what we offer as a product, as well as this is a crowd that's crypto native. So, trying to train a non-crypto native crowd on how to use these tokens and how to secure. Mm-hmm. It takes a lot of effort. And on top of that, DeFi or decentralized applications, when we started focusing on this field a few years ago, it was nascent and had some inherent problems. Number one being, censorship resistance, right? Like a lot of what we do is not very welcome in the broader ecosystem. If you look at centralized cloud providers, right? So, the reason we wanted to pick and choose our own people to help first was an obvious choice, and fortunately the space has been growing rapidly, and also by staying closer to our users, we can also offer our Akash token itself, and actually use some of these products that our customers offer. So it's a significant alignment with DeFi. That said, our broader market is really the bigger cloud, and the next best, or the most attractive area for us to focus is machine learning and computation heavy cloud, because that segment is currently suffering with immense cost problem. If you look at Andreessen Horowitz wrote a report recently on how and that stated essentially 20% of margins tend to go to the cloud, right? So it's extremely hard being an AI company, the growth stage AI company that's trying to survive in this increasingly prohibitive layer called cloud. So that's attractive for us because Akash, one of the biggest benefits is cost savings, right? So the model that we envision for an AI company to function is more of a peer-to-peer cloud. So to give you an example, since it's so expensive for to operate in the cloud, a lot of these companies tend to bring in their workloads in-house, right? So they have a server farm in the offices that has GPU clusters, and they tend to use these clusters. But the problem is they only use these clusters maybe 2 or 3 hours a day while they're training these models. And most of the time they're not using them. But when they want to use them, they tend to peak their usage, and they tend to need more than they have. And that's when they still end up using the cloud, right? So it's not completely optimizing your cost by bringing in. And it's very inefficient because of the usage pattern. In a scenario like that, they can install Akash and offer this unused capacity and earn credits in exchange, which is essentially a Akash token, and they can use these credits when they want to use a peak capacity. So that's really when you see providers becoming users and users becoming providers, and that's very attractive for us. And we had incredible demand from machine learning, and we like to see that be our next use case.
Yeah, that's great, Greg, and that's a huge inefficiency, and that's the case with a lot of things right now, where you're only utilizing the full capacity for a small amount of time, and otherwise you would just have these assets that are sitting there, and to be able to capitalize on that and share resources as well is a huge advantage. So that's great to hear that your customers like that.
8.2 million data centers, 85% not used. So you can imagine the kind of capacity out there.
Yeah, that's crazy. And I was researching into Akash, and I saw that you recently released the Mainnet 2. Now, it sounds like a big milestone. Could you just give an update on what is the new upgrades to the Mainnet 2?
Mainnet 2 essentially completes what we promised in a white paper. So this is the world's first marketplace that we proposed, our white paper in 2017 that we released. And we laid out the design for how a reverse auction marketplace for a cloud computing network would look like. And this is our realization of that vision. We had over 2 years of testing. As you know, this is a complicated product. And 2 years of testing, multiple test nets, and days and months of work that went into essentially launching the promise of a decentralized cloud. In the current offering, it's a baseline offering in the sense that you can actually ask for a workload, and providers will bid on the workload, and the tenant, the lowest bid that matches all the requirements tends to win, and you can deploy. And it's a phenomenal system that does basic operations on deployment, and also adds different little features that we didn't quite talk about in our white paper on, like improving trustability. As you know, a decentralized networks, especially something that's not a verifiable platform, like a smart contracts platform, Akash is not. So we have the question of like whether can we get the resources that we are promised. So we added this feature called audited attributes, where providers that are advertising what they have is audited by a third party, a trusted third party, and whatnot. So that improves the trust in a decentralized network. So we added this amazing, and we built usability tools on top of that. So it's not as obvious that you're actually interacting with a blockchain, but rather feels like a more open source tool than a trading transactions, engaging transactions, this sort of thing.
That's great. And yeah, I know you sort of mentioned that it's this new UI is sort of like a Uniswap experience. Now, I thought that was a really interesting comparison. Can you just sort of elaborate on what you meant by that?
So one of the least understood and least appreciated things in decentralized networks, I think, is user experience, right? I love Uniswap, even though I pay a premium both in gas fees or even like exchange fees. I tend to use Uniswap first before I go to centralized exchanges. Why? Think about the sheer experience of swapping two tokens, right? So if you have to go on a centralized exchange, you go log in, solve the CAPTCHA, hope you get the traffic lights right, the number of traffic lights, and then you go and log in, and then you swap, you pay the fee, and then first to deposit, there's whole like gamut of things you go through to deposit things, and then you swap and then withdraw with two verifications, your email, and then your 2FA, and then you log out. The entire process is so cumbersome versus going to Uniswap and click, you're done. I mean, you pay extra gas fee, but sure, I'm willing to pay the premium because of the comfort. I think people tend to not understand the value of comfort, and that what Uniswap showed us is like, you don't need to be fast or cheap. You can actually provide incredible user experience based on a decentralized network, and that's a lot preferred than normal. And on top of that, the beauty of non-custodianless, and beauty of like I owning my assets, and the beauty of there's a security that I get from owning my own keys. All that adds up to the experience of Uniswap. So imagine extending similar experience to the cloud. I mean, Akash today, there's no email addresses and there are no passwords. There's no need for you to give your personal information that we all know the kinds of things that happen these days, and the compromises we have to make to deploy something on the cloud. No credit cards, none of that stuff. So it's beautiful. Right now, the experience is command line, but yes, we will extend that experience over to the web. But when we do that, you will notice a Uniswap style deployment experience, and that's coming very soon. So that makes the network a lot more programmable, a lot more composable. And what we're really excited with IBC coming live is extended the composability to the rest of the ecosystem through interoperability is extremely powerful. So I had this vision of like ownerless web services, like where people can actually own web services, not a single entity or not a single human being, but the world can actually own a web service that is managed by a DAO and has a threshold signature for deploying and controlling all that stuff. So all that can be realized now with the decentralized cloud. I'm really excited about.
Yeah, that is very exciting, and I'm really interested to see how that plays out as you continue to grow the network. And earlier you mentioned about capitalizing on those underutilized resources and rewarding those participants with the Akash Network token. And I just wanted to touch back on the token because I know there is a lot of intricacies within the platform that are using the Akash token. So if you could just elaborate a little bit on what are the main functionalities with the Akash token, and does it create a sustainable ecosystem within the Akash network?
Sure. So the Akash AKT is a native token of Akash Network. The first primary use for the AKT token is to secure the network. As you know, Akash is a sovereign, independent network. It is an L1 in its own right? It is secured by a validator set that essentially come to consensus in a proof of stake algorithm. And each token has one vote. That's how you secure the network. So it's a staking token. Number two, it is a value of exchange. Now, Akash, you have different properties called stream payments and escrow type payments, and Akash Token provides those beautiful features at a cost model that's sovereign, so we don't really have to worry about the Ethereum style gas fees or stuff like that. And a third thing is it is used to create subsidies, right? So right now we bootstrapped the Akash network, the security of the Akash network, using the inflation. So without inflation, there is no incentive for folks to stake the token, without which we will not have a network. So the subsidies can be created by having control over the monetary policy. And where we are going is, I wrote a paper called Bootstrapping a Free Market by Borrowing from the Future. Essentially, the idea that, yes, you have this inflation and you can use this inflation to subsidize some of the costs, and that will in turn can actually accelerate growth. And this is not a new idea. This is an idea that Leonard Keynes proposed on how you subsidize corn industry in the United States, or how you subsidize textile industry in India. So when you have an industry and you want to accelerate or growth in that industry using inflation, that means creating new money supply and using that to actually subsidize, or like taxation, but usually it's the inflation, right? That we create is actually a good way to do so, right? So we kind of borrowed some of those ideas and implemented or proposed to be implemented very soon. So using that, we can actually reduce the cost even further to 10x. So wow. It's of course an economic hack, right? So and the difference is actually coming from the inflation, and it gets added to the thing. But yes, that's not like sustainable on a long term. But for whatever, in the sense there's a finite amount of tokens. You can't just keep printing tokens, right? And again, the inflation is on a decay curve, so the inflation goes down every block period. Right now, we began at 100 million tokens, and there will be 389 million ever created in 80 years or so, right? So it's not infinite. I mean, it's still finite, but as long as the subsidies are accelerating growth, which in turn increases the utility of the token, which in turn attracts liquidity, right? So it goes in a cycle of like this growth feeding into the adoption, that feeding into the liquidity. So, and that's the beauty of this cyclical economics of Akash.
Great, thanks for that, Greg. And we're running short on time, but one of my last questions is, in terms of the long-term success of Akash Network, what do you think will be one of the major key factors to achieving that long-term success?
The key factors will be product market fit, the self-served user, right? A user that can actually use the network without talking to anybody, without asking anybody, and sustain that. I think that is going to be the pinnacle of Akash. And now we saw a certain amount of product market fit in our testnets. I'm not going to claim that we have product market fit because we just launched yesterday. And that is going to be our number one priority. And again, with product market fit, you have to make adjustments and you have to make iterations on the way. And we're really looking forward to, we're launching this network with the mindset that, yes, we're going to have a lot of things that we're going to learn. And we're really excited about these learnings and actually working with the people to get to the product market fit.
Definitely, it is very exciting. And for the viewers that are looking to follow along with the updates to Akash Network and get involved, what's the best way for them to learn more?
The best way, of course, go to our website, Akash Network, and you'll find a lot of resources. Our blog is very, very active and we consistently publish. But Twitter is where we live. So Akash's Twitter account is @AkashNet_, and my Twitter account is Greg Osuri. And we both are very, very active on Twitter, and I respond to people really quickly on Twitter, and my DMs are open as well. And of course, there are Telegram channels and Discord channels as well that are pretty heavy in terms of engagement.
Great, thank you, Greg. I will leave those links in the description box below for the viewers. All the best with Akash Network moving forward, and let's follow up in the near future.
Thank you, Ashton. This was really, really fun.